Hi Mzansi, welcome back to Farmers Inside Track. I am your host, Patricia Tembo, and today's episode is brought to you by Wieta. Here is my colleague Lisa Kanyavena in conversation with Christone Hornsby from Wieta, Emerentia Patientia from Fairtrade Africa, and Evan Cupido from Stronger Together to discuss their collaborative efforts this year.
Welcome to Farmers Inside Track. Christone Hornsby from Wieta, Emerentia Patientia from Fairtrade Africa, and Evan Cupido from Stronger Together SA. Christone, what is Wieta's mission and how does it promote ethical trade practices in the wine industry?
Fantastic. Thank you again for the opportunity. It's a really good opportunity just to sensitize your guys' listeners on what our three organizations have collaboratively worked on. But just from Wieta's perspective, the Wine and Agricultural Ethical Trade Association, we're a multi-stakeholder organization focusing on providing a sustainable ethical trade program for the South African wine industry, consisting of 4 levels of membership. So those are producers, who are farms and sellers. We also provide membership for temporary employment service providers as well as trade unions. And within the space are thematic areas where we focus our mission and our values is around fair treatment, respectful relationships, dignified lives within the wine and agricultural value chain. Our 4 areas of core work is ensuring that Wieta has a strong and robust ethical social standard. And what that means is that there is 13 principles in which we ensure that every farm, every seller, temporary employment service provider, trader, trade union, anyone that falls within the value chain needs to uphold. And this consists of management systems, health and safety practices on the ground, housing, regular employment, social responsibility and community development. These play part and parcels within that 13 principles: child labor, forced labor, no bonded labor. All those things play part and parcel of ensuring that our members follow and have a robust operational system that ensures that farm workers at every level, even employees, management, has policies in place, has a level of farm worker contract, good structural housing on site, health and safety practices are being upheld on the cellar and in the vineyards. And all of this forms part and parcel of us ensuring that farms are looking after people. And within that space, it's important for us to verify that. And how do we verify that? I think that's a question that will probably come up from your listeners is we have a audit process methodology. And within that audit process methodology, there are layers in which we give risk rating to our members. We also have risk findings, which consist of majors, minors, criticals, and we also have as a better practice. And within those risk ratings and those risk findings, you'll have a farm that will be able to get a level A or a risk rating A, which is that they get a audit every 3 years, a B every 2 years, a C every year. And then we also have a D. Our Ds are when a farm needs to automatically get another audit if they haven't done well in terms of our requirements, our Wieta standard. So they'll need to get audited again in terms of those risk area findings. So those criteria shapes part and parcel of the level of market access that your farm or seller can get locally or internationally. What's good about Wieta in terms of its standard and its rigorous nature is that it gets benchmarked globally. So we've done a few benchmarks, one within the Nordic monopoly space, where they've used our standard against their detail requirements, also ESG requirements. We've also done one with Sustainable Supply Chain Initiative, which is the Consumer Goods Forum, one of the highest forms of social verification for any goods or any commodity requirements audit. So what they've done is they've ensured that us, through our operational approach, through our Wieta labor desk, which is a whistleblowing mechanism, through our standard, our audit process methodology, that they've verified that at the highest level in terms of international labor organizations, conventions, in terms of other countries' legislative requirements, that our standard, even our national legislative requirements, our standard has met that. And thankfully we did pass it this year, and we're going through another one at the end of the year. And what it has done is it's given us recognition, ensuring that farms or sellers don't have to go through an additional audit or verification with their Wieta assurance letter, which we call it. Once they've completed their audit, they receive that, and they have now a level of market access. And there's credibility towards that assurance letter, which is very important for us. So at all levels, we have close to 1,400 members. Their interests are safeguarded in terms of their business, and the farm workers are treated with a level of dignity and respect, and their livelihoods are obviously secured, and we assure against that. A whistleblowing mechanism, which is very important to the wine industry. It provides social dialogue. It provides internal, external access to our Wieta members to lay a complaint, or if there's a standards violation, they can call our Wieta Labour Desk hotline. And obviously from a standards point of view and from an audit assurance point of view, we safeguard that members are following our requirements. And through Wieta, those requirements also focus on thematic topics such as human rights due diligence, fair labor practice, sustainability within the agricultural supply chain. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of Wieta, the Wine and Agricultural Trade Association.
It's obviously not a secret that Wieta has done an incredible work throughout the year. I'd like to take you back to what I think was your most recent event. Can you describe the ethical leadership training hosted by Wieta in July?
Yes, thanks for that, Lisa. So just on behalf of my colleagues, we've embarked on this collaboration in 2024 with a focus being on ethical leadership, which is looking at not just management, but specific management. So this would be management that has a niche working relationship with farm workers, which are your supervisors and your junior management. And that was our focus area for the past 2 years. This year, more of the same from our side. So on the 15th of July and the 17th of July, we went into Robertson and then we went into Worcester, and we focused our efforts and our training sessions again on management, but specifically junior management, supervisors, those that work directly with farm workers, as I mentioned. So strengthening the ethical leadership skills was very important for us. So what we looked at was obviously from the ethical trade standards principles from every organization and its requirements. We looked at, from my perspective and also from Evan as well as Emma, introduction to human rights and business rights as well, focusing on HREDD and HRDD, understanding what is going on in the markets overseas and the compliance requirements that relates to human rights due diligence. That was very important because, as I mentioned previously, we work with a lot of international buyers, we work with a lot of international organizations, and therefore with our farms and sellers pushing their products overseas, there are certain requirements, supply chain requirements and verification that needs to be done at every level. And it was important for the three of us to sensitize with the management how important it is at every level throughout the supply chain that there's a level of due diligence, especially working with people involved from a compliance component. So that was a very important aspect. And also just focusing on soft people skills when working with people. So communication of management system requirements and communication skills requirements when working with people. I think that's very important. That's one thing working within the environmental space. I think Evan has mentioned this, but it's a different thing working in the social space where you've got to manage complex industrial relationships. So what we focused on from my side, at least, was those areas. So making sure that farms, sellers, management understand that there's a cascading impact in terms of their business relationships up until the farm workers, because of international requirements, corporate sustainable due diligence acts, your EU mandatory requirements around human rights due diligence. There's a lot of various legislations out there that concerns farm workers, your suppliers, management, and your governance of those relationships. And what's important is within the space that we find ourselves in as Wieta, Strong Together South Africa, as Fairtrade, it's important that that message gets brought across at all levels so that we ensure we're promoting fair labor practices and that we are implementing our standards across the board throughout our suppliers, be it your transport drivers, be it temporary employment service providers, farm workers, management across all levels. Anyone that has service level agreement outside of your business and yourselves, they understand that requirements. So importantly, when farms get audited or sellers get audited, when we have our independent third party auditing bodies that come on to farms, they verify those practices. So from Wieta's perspective, we've got 4 bodies that audit on top of the standard. Our job in terms of this collaboration is ensuring that people understand these various standards, rules and requirements nationally, internationally, and how it needs to be implemented on the ground. So our ethical leadership training was very well received. From the feedback we've received, we're hoping to build on that again, hoping 2026 as well.
How does Wieta collaborate with other organizations to promote sustainability in the wine industry?
I think I answered a little bit of that in the previous question, but within the space that we find ourselves in, I think it's important that we do hold hands with like-minded organizations like ourselves to ensure that the message of fair labor practices, fair treatment for farm workers, sustainability for businesses, we undertake that collaboratively with the likes of Fairtrade Africa, with the likes of Stronger Together South Africa, government, non-government, trade unions, and with even the space of universities, with research. It's very important that farms understand what's going on in terms of the research space, knowing the risks. One of the things that we do quite well at Wieta as part of my responsibilities, presenting audit findings and doing a bit of a deep dive analysis on those findings, be it health and safety risks, be it housing risks, labor risks, internal management risks that have come out, or areas such as thematic areas such as child labor, forced labor, bonded labor, anything related to the 13 standard principles of Wieta. We know that we can't do it on our own in terms of the collaborative initiatives that we do. We have 1,400 members. So any like-minded organizations such as your Department of Employment and Labor, Department of Agriculture, the CCMA, like I mentioned, universities, and then obviously our colleagues on the podcast here, we find that our reach is more impactful once we've undertaken those collaborations, because the focus is on the social or on the environmental, and the aspects of work from the 3 organizations are tailor-fitted to work collaboratively together in these types of collaborative initiatives, focusing on sustainability, social upliftment of farm workers or community, or just ethical best practices that are happening on farms. So what's important is when these collaborations do take place, that farms see that it's not duplication of efforts that have been undertaken, so that they don't have to go to a separate thing, that they know, okay, in July next year, there's going to be something like this again. Hopefully, there'll be something like this again. And we are hopeful that farms and sellers will come, because we believe the work that we're doing cascades and is obviously impactful in terms of ensuring that not only farm workers' livelihoods are secured, but from a producer and management perspective, their business interests are also heard. We at Wieta, we provide obviously a social dialogue platform, advocacy platform, as well as a monitoring and compliance platform. But I think what's important is to listen with open hearts and open minds to our farm workers and our management, so that the learnings and peer-to-peer learnings can take place and we can hear what's happening on the ground as well. So we believe that the collaboration has been quite impactful, quite important for the wine industry, and is going to be something that I feel needs to continue in the years to come, so that our farms management and farm workers can benefit from these types of initiatives.
Moving on to fair trade, Emerentia, can you please tell us what is Fairtrade Africa's role in promoting fair trade practices in the wine industry in South Africa?
Thank you, Lisa, for this opportunity. Maybe just a bit of a background about Fairtrade. Fairtrade is owned by its members, which are also African producer organizations that is certified under the International Fair Trade Standards. and the organization is owned by the members and represents over 1.3 million farmers and workers across 28 countries in Africa and in the Middle East. And also an independent audit firm does our auditing called FlowSit. And FlowSit has earned themselves the reputation as a trusted auditing firm that does independent auditing and expert auditing for Fairtrade certified farms. Fairtrade per se plays a very pivotal role in terms of transforming the South African wine industry. We promote ethical trade practices and prioritize the rights and the dignity of workers. So, as the largest producer and Fairtrade certified wine globally, South Africa benefits from the Fairtrade standards, which are very rigorous and also aims to ensure that fair wages, safe working conditions and environmental sustainability are upheld. We work directly with producer organizations to uphold these standards, and we also advocate for systematic change in the industry that has holistically been shaped by inequality or historically. Through the certification process, we also provide training. We build partnerships like in the instance with us, Stronger Together and Wieta. We also help producers to access global markets while we ensure that the benefits of trade are being shared more equally across the value chain.
And can you describe the Donuts Wine Project and its objectives?
The Donuts Wine Project is funded through the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and some global business partners. The name Donuts stands for Dignified Opportunities Nurtured Through Trade and Sustainability, and it's a human rights-based initiative. Fairtrade leads this initiative, and the core objectives are to ensure that the wine farm workers and producers in South Africa can enjoy secure, sustainable livelihoods. There are basically 3 focus areas of the Donut Wine Project, and it's social in terms of strengthening civil society and promoting inclusive and democratic producer organizations. Secondly, from an economic perspective, it advances the workers' rights and their right to decent work, and as well as the farmers' rights to earn a living income. Then if you look from an ecological perspective, it also encourages climate resilient farming and environmental stewardship. So the project emphasizes gender equality, the empowerment of youth, and the inclusion of vulnerable groups. This happens so that it also ensures that no worker feels left behind. So Fairtrade certification addresses the deeper systematic issues such as low unionization in the industry, gender discrimination, and the gap between earning a minimum wage and a living wage. As the Donuts Wine Project, we complement to address these issues.
How does Fairtrade Africa support wine farmers and workers in South Africa?
Fairtrade Africa supports the farmers and workers through a combination of certification, capacity building, and advocacy. Certified producers receive a Fairtrade premium, and this is an additional sum of money that is invested in the community development projects like your education, healthcare, and housing. So what happens is this sum of money is paid out to the producer, but it is managed by the workers. That forms a committee and what we call the Fairtrade Premium Committee. So the workers ultimately decide how they want to invest that money in their community. So Fairtrade Africa also facilitates the training of workers on workers' rights, training around gender equality, training around responsible business practices for our producers through these initiatives and through projects like the Donuts Wine Project. We strengthen the capacity of trade unions. We promote social dialogue between workers and employers. And we also support the compliance of international labor standards. So basically, this is a holistic approach that Fairtrade use to ensure that it's not just about the label and it's not just about putting a label on a product, but it's really a tool for real lasting change in the lives of those who grow and produce our wine and other products.
Now to Stronger Together South Africa. Evan, can you tell us what is Stronger Together's South Africa's focus in the wine industry and how does it promote responsible recruitment practices?
Thank you, Lisa, for this opportunity. Some background about Stronger Together. We've been working in the wine industry since 2017, 2018. And when we started this initiative, we worked very closely and still do with Wieta. I'll touch on a bit about that collaboration that we had recently. Our focus was, when we started, primarily looking at issues around labor exploitation within supply chains and how this manifests itself in, forced labor, bonded labor. And over the years, our program has developed to support businesses, producers, sellers to understand this fairly complex problem that does not just only affect South Africa, but as a phenomenon at a global level. And we do this by providing guidance, resources, and trainings to producers so that they can understand what the risks are and how to safeguard their operations from labor exploitation. One of the key focus within the labor space is how workers are recruited. And one of the key drivers for labor exploitation is irresponsible recruitment practices within the wine sector and agriculture more broadly. There is a dependency on labor. Whenever you're dealing with labor and you're bringing in high numbers of people, whether that be permanent, seasonal, temporary, there are significant risks to producers. So our goal has always been to provide them with the support, guidance to understand how these issues can manifest themselves and what they can do to mitigate and safeguard their operations from bad recruitment practices. Irresponsible recruitment through, charging workers recruitment fees, not offering them contracts, withholding their documents, all falls under what we refer to as bad labor practices. And over the years, we've had this conversation happening with producers in the wine industry to say, look, these are the issues. This is how they manifest themselves, and this is what you can do to protect your businesses.
Can you describe the Stronger Together sessions mentioned in the attendee feedback?
As mentioned by my colleagues, over those 2 days, each of our organizations had a specific focus. And I think a key thing with all of our input is to see how our work complements one another. Wieta and Fairtrade mentioned sort of their focus areas. We position ourselves as Stronger Together as sort of beyond compliance. So we don't go out to farms to do audits. We feel there's already many other organizations capable of doing that. We very much see ourselves as a specialized program focusing on mitigating bad labor practices by capacitating businesses. So within those sessions, our approach is one of taking hands with producers, with sellers. It's not a blaming session. We're not saying that any business is doing anything wrong. Rather, our approach has been to impart knowledge, impart guidance. We often say you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And many times when things tend to go wrong, it's because we either lack understanding of labor laws, people aren't adequately trained on ethical labor practices. So our idea was to impart this knowledge, and as my colleagues have mentioned, we've took a very strategic approach over this last 2 years where we, based on feedback and salient risks, we've identified a group of individuals within companies who have an important role to play, namely supervisors, junior managers. And so the Stronger Together sessions, we focus specifically on what is ethical recruitment practices and ethical practices at farm level. We did this through various case studies that we developed, scenarios depicting good and bad practices. And then by the end of the session, we provide each attendee with a leaflet that they could take home that contains sort of 10 steps to ensure ethical recruitment. This included from, not charging workers recruitment fees, providing them contracts in the language they understand, how they should engage with their teams at farm level, at seller level, understanding your company's grievance processes. All of these falls under ethical labor practices and ethical recruitment practices, which we covered in that 2 sessions.
How does Stronger Together South Africa contribute to building a more just and sustainable wine industry?
Our focus, and I think I speak for all of us here, we are all have the same vision and same goal of having, particularly the wine industry, as leaders of sustainability, and to ensure that we have a value chain that is seen not just nationally but internationally as leaders in its field. Where our value comes in particularly is when we think of sustainability, more often we think only of the environmental side. So, that is our businesses, the use of chemicals, pesticides, water, all of that has been a key part of the sustainability conversation, and rightfully so. But equally added to that is the social element, and this often gets overlooked. Within the wine sector, there are individuals that are working at farm level, at seller level, and how grapes gets from the field to the retailer and then ultimately to the end consumer is a complex process. So we've always maintained that when we talk about sustainability, we need to give consideration for the people within our value chain, and we need to be mindful of the business practices that we have so that it contributes to upholding human rights within the supply chain. I think this makes sense for a number of reasons. Just then, and Emma spoke about these audit requirements, these market access requirements. But over and above that, there's also that this is the right thing to do. If you treat your employees, your staff fairly, and your good relationships, it improves productivity within the sector. It contributes to more harmonious working relationships. So we see ourselves as being this beyond compliance program where we support companies, their staff, their employees to understand how working together we can ensure effective change and be seen as leaders at the international level when it comes to ethical trade.
And lastly, for all 3 of you, how do the collaborations between Wieta, Fairtrade Africa, and Stronger Together South Africa contribute to positive change in the wine industry in the country?
Just in terms of our collaboration, I think Evan touched on it. Very important. With regards to ethical trade, it's transforming the way people do business. As Evan had mentioned, and the thing that we do quite well is identifying where common risks are in terms of supply chain. And when businesses understand the implication, and not just from business point of view, from management to farm workers at every level, if you are a stakeholder in the value chain, those things can have an impact on your end product and where it goes to. So ethical business is so important. Your consumer is very wary of where and how things need to be produced. From an environmental level, your weight bottling of your bottles, your carbon footprint, your integrated pest management on vineyards, on farms. From the social side, as Evan had mentioned, in terms of those fair labor conditions, is there contract in place with overtime, with leave, meeting minimum wage, housing, health and safety practices on site. All of this plays an important role. And then going into that next step, your policies and procedures, that governance of your suppliers, are you asking the same level of requirements in terms of ethical requirements to your independent third-party suppliers? People are aware of it. And I think accessibility to technology plays an important role. One of the things that Wieta has done is we provided a QR code on our assurance letter where you can check the validity of that code if you are interested in that. If you're a supplier, if you're a Wieta member, you can check the validity of that. But the importance of this collaboration is that conscious consumerism is becoming more of an uptake in our world. not just in the ethical space, broader space. People are concerned for how the environment and the social is being upheld, especially the social side. We get reports overseas, various reports on various industry and commodities within Africa, in South Africa as well. And what's important is the response and the approach, and ensuring that from a organizational point of view, you need to be proactive and not reactive. You need to be opening to listen and hear what people have to say. And that speaks into the type of platforms that we've facilitated. A very open platform. As Emma had mentioned, our organizations have really opened up the door for various farms to come together and to have that dialogue with us in terms of these thematic issues that have come up, be it forced labor, bonded labor, be it specific bespoke issues related to Fairtrade or Wieta farms that are under requirements. But what's important about this collaboration is that every farm that is a Wieta, Fairtrade, or a member of Stronger Together, they know where they can go to in terms of capacity building, and training that speaks into not just compliance requirements, but sustainability and also better practices and a better way of doing business, so that livelihoods can be secured for farm workers and that there is safeguards in terms of their business interests as well. So long may this continue in 2026. And I know our farms and sellers are asking for more of the same.
From Fairtrade Africa, as particular donuts wine side, I totally agree with what Tristan just mentioned. I think a collaboration is really the key to the success of any industry, not just agriculture. But I think for agriculture, it's just such a new thing because we've been so used to just doing what needs to be done because there's such a lot of work to be done. But I think this collaboration has really set a new trend in the industry. And like Tristan has mentioned, the producers are even asking for this, and that really reassured us that this is something that we need to continue doing because it's about sharing knowledge. It's about managing the risks together. It's about improving efficiencies together. It's about enhancing the market access for our producers together. And ultimately, the worker will also benefit the market access that the producer enjoys. South Africa has also been known for its silos, but I think we've got a winning recipe here that we are proud of collaborating. We are proud of this collaboration, and we will indeed amplify the reach by continuing to work together as industry role players to make sure that our producers ultimately enjoys the benefits and the workers enjoys the benefits that comes from this collaboration. Overall, collaboration is a powerful tool. I think we all agree on that. And this tool drives the positive change, and it ensures that we achieve even greater impact through the synergy that we create as 3 units operating in this industry.
Yeah, and then just finally, I think from my side, there are 2 positive contributions. On the one hand, us as organizations here, we saw that there was a lot of synergy in the work that we did. And as we've discussed today, what we cover in our respective work, there are differences, but also a lot of synergies. And so we thought it was important to partner together, no pun intended, but we are stronger together where there are overlaps in areas of work, to present a united voice to industry, to businesses, to show them what does it mean from an ethical perspective, and presenting one united voice. So it made a lot of sense for us to work together. I think this, as very much as Emma mentioned, has set a trend for future collaborations and to show how meaningful impact can be when you work together. And then also on a second level, we've also been very open and receptive to feedback from industry collectively. We can all agree on this call within the sustainability space. There's a lot of pressure and expectations on business in the wine industry requirements, whether that be reporting, doing audits. And we wanted to ease the burden on those in the wine industry by presenting a united force and showing, look, it's not about reinventing the wheel, but how the Stronger Together guidance complements Fairtrade, how it complements Wieta, how it speaks to the code, to give them assurance that what they can do without having to stretch themselves thin. So we were very open to that. And I think, as my colleagues have mentioned, as a result, we've got a lot better buy-in, very positive uptake from our offerings by working together. And no doubt, this is a recipe that we would like to continue into the next year as well.
Evan, Emerentia, Christone, thank you so much for joining us and sharing the incredible work that you have done and continue to do.
Thank you to Christone Hornsby from Wieta, Emerentia Patientia from Fairtrade Africa, and Evan Cupido from Stronger Together. This episode was brought to you by Wieta. Thank you for listening and keep growing with us.